first recipes I shared, you know, and I was new to the whole vlogging and blogging and recipe development and everything else, because there's a technique behind everything, and I called it shepherd's pie. The amount of hate and comments based on my race and everything else, because I used, and today I'm using it again, ground beef rather than ground lamb. You'd think the world was ending. They had to go on and on and on. Yeah, it's cottage pie and bring in my race and all these different things. But anyhow, we are not doing shepherd's pie. This is what it is, and I'll tell you what it is. I have leftover mashed potato from dinner a couple nights ago. You would have seen me talk about that on Instagram and TikTok. Yeah, I'm on TikTok now. I had a video on there. So I have that leftover mashed potato, and I have some pieces of steak left back with some of that grilled mushroom, grilled steak, and sauteed mushrooms and garlic and stuff like that. And I love putting this together, as well as some of the gravy, that green peppercorn gravy. That is optional. You don't really need it here because we're going to develop our own sort of sauce or gravy for things. Yes, we are taking on the sort of technique of making shepherd's pie. We're not calling it shepherd's pie because I'm not ready for the stupid comments. What I'm going to do is brown this ground beef. Full recipe will be available on CaribbeanPod.com. While it's not a Caribbean recipe, as a kid growing up on the islands, while mommy never made this for us, she stuck more to traditional Caribbean recipes. I must have had it at a friend's house or something. I can't remember, but man, from those days till now, we're talking 50 years, man. When I was in my diaper, I ain't eating shepherd's pie. Come on, man. Anyhow, it will still be posted on CaribbeanPod.com, so head over there to sort out that recipe. We have the ground beef, and that's a medium ground beef, which means there's a bit of fat in there, so I won't be using any oil. If you're using a lean ground beef or turkey or chicken, you can use a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half of whatever your favorite oil is. I have the bit of leftover steak here with some mushrooms, tomato paste or puree, a combination of parsley chopped up finely with Parmesan cheese, some black pepper, salt, thyme, a large onion, some Worcestershire. We've got a combination here of peas, carrots, corn, and some green beans. All-purpose flour. We've got beef stock, and of course the leftover gravy. I'm putting all of those things together. Now, if you wanted to add some cheddar cheese later on in the potato, you can do that. And my mashed potato is a garlic mashed potato, so I've got that hint of garlic in there. Now, you don't need to have the leftover steak. I'm going to purposely use it. I'm going to chop it up a bit fine and use it in here because I find the smoky elements from that steak will sort of complement the other flavors here. So again, not shepherd's pie. If you want to call it cottage pie, call it cottage pie, but I'm just rocking something. Oh, fresh thyme. Did I mention fresh thyme? Fresh thyme. Be mindful though, and this video is getting a little bit long. The salt. Be mindful that the beef stock that you use will have a sodium element to it. And when I cooked the mushroom as well as the steak, it was salted. The mashed potato is salted also. What I'm doing, and I hate chunky pieces of ground beef. The edge of my spatula here, all I'm doing is, as it browns, I'm smashing it with the edge there just to break it up. The finer I can get it, the more happy I will be. I hate chunky ground beef, no matter if it's a meat sauce. In this case here, if I'm doing a chili, whatever it is, I like to break it up really, really fine. So it will take a few minutes on that medium heat, but the whole idea, and again, I didn't start with any oil because this is a medium ground beef, which means there is fat in there, and you're going to see as it renders down, you're going to see more fat there, and this is why I didn't start with any oil. Now, if you're using the ground turkey or chicken or anything that's lean, you will be required to start with a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half of olive oil or whatever oil you like using. The beef is nice and browned, And you can see how small pieces I got it into. What's gonna happen now is once we add the beef stock in there and we start to reduce that down, it's gonna cook a bit further and it'll get a bit smaller. At this point, I'm gonna add that leftover steak and mushrooms. That's gonna go in there. Black pepper, salt, and later on you can adjust that salt to your liking, and I'll tell you when you can adjust it. But for now, it's just that black pepper and the salt. Give that a little stir. Now, the Caribbean in you may want the remnants of a corn that we made that was in dinner with the with the mushrooms. Small thing you get used to. The Caribbean in you may want to add a bit of Caribbean green seasoning. Now would be the time to add that. And you notice how we didn't have to add any fat, and that is because, like I said earlier, it's a medium ground beef, but I'm also using a non-stick pan, which helps quite a bit as well. In the meantime, preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And using that same fat, that's how we're gonna cook the onions. And that is a large onion, finely diced. Just gonna hit that a little scrape down in there. And we're gonna mix that in. Turn your heat down to medium-low, and we're gonna cook that just until this softens up. If you wanted to add a couple cloves of crushed garlic, which certainly works. My mashed potato has roasted garlic in there, so I ain't trying to overdo it with the whole garlic thing. We're dealing with Dracula this rounds. No vampires out here. It will take about 5 minutes for that onion to soften up and go translucent. Here I'm going to add the tablespoon of all-purpose flour, and I'm just going to cook that in. And the reason for adding it is it's going to help thicken up this sort of gravy or sauce later on, so it doesn't separate on us when we put it as the base for the nut shepherd's pie. I'm having fun with that. Yes. It's very important that we cook out the rawness of that flour, else it's going to be an unpleasant taste later on when your non-shepherd's pie is done. Trust me, you want to cook out that rawness, and I'm using all the fat that's naturally in there. In goes that Worcestershire, the fresh thyme, and what I did was I have all the tender stems, but I removed most of the leaves. If all you have is dried thyme, well, if that's the time you have, that's the time you have, you know what I mean? Use that, but I am not a fan of dry thyme. Yo, I can use fresh thyme in just about everything that I cook. Dry thyme, I don't know, man, it's sort of musty sort of flavor and taste you get from it. And yo, the end of summer, I've even dried my own thyme, you know, to see, well, maybe it's a manufacturing thing or something. I just don't like it, boy, no love for it. Yeah, tomato paste. That's gonna give it a nice little acidity and pull things together. If you find that it needs a little bit of sweetness, may I recommend adding a bit of either tomato ketchup or about a teaspoon or so of brown sugar. It's been about 3 minutes since I added the tomato puree paste in there. Therefore, I will add the beef stock to things. We're gonna raise the heat up just a tiny bit, and we're going to bring that up to a boil, and that's going to give it a deeper, richer beef flavor. We're going to follow up with the vegetable sort of medley that we have there: corn, peas, green beans, and it's a great way to sneak vegetables in if you have picky eaters in your house, because I was going to say picky kids, but some adults can be pretty picky as well. This step is optional, but I've got that lovely homemade green peppercorn gravy that's left over, so why not use it in there? You don't need to, but again, I have it. Why not use it? Waste not, want not. That is the whole lesson today, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to bring this up to a boil, then we're going to reduce it down by about a third or so as far as the liquid is concerned. At that point, you will taste it for salt. Adjust the salt. Again, if you want a little sweetness to it, you can add a bit of brown sugar there. The other thing is, if you wanted to add some rosemary, and you know I have that thyme in there, if you wanted to add some chopped rosemary, now would be an ideal time to add that rosemary in there. One of them things I just don't like. I don't like rosemary and her sisters. Nope. Don't like them at all. It took about 10 minutes, but it's to the sort of consistency that I want. I want to just put a tiny bit of liquid still in there because that's gonna soak into the mashed potato. So I'm gonna turn off my stove and I'm just gonna set it aside from the burner just to sort of cool down and sort of firm up for about 5 minutes. Pour it into my oven-proof dish and I'm just gonna sort of level it off, tuck things down. We've got that leftover mashed potato. So I'm just gonna take tablespoonful at a time. Whoa, brother, what are you doing? Trying to make me look bad on the people camera, boy. But anyhow, we're gonna sort of top that right on top there. And before we continue, I have the combination of parsley with Parmesan cheese. We're just gonna sprinkle that on because what's gonna happen is I'm gonna make it nice and smooth later, but I want some of this all the way through the potato. Yeah, I needed a bit more of that mashed potato. I needed a smaller, you know, one of the things about this is that predicting the perfect size of baking dish to use can be a bit tricky. In my case here, the one that I have that's smaller is too small. This one here is maybe about an inch too big. Hold on, let's measure this. So we've got 13 inches, 9 inches by about 2.5, I'd say 3 inches. I needed it to be maybe about an inch smaller. Maybe about 12 inches. No, maybe about 10 inches would be fine. So 10 by 9 would be excellent. All I'm doing is sort of tapping it down just a little bit. Those little edges that you're seeing there. Now if you have a more smooth mashed potato, what I would recommend doing if it's relatively flat, use a fork and sort of press in the fork just to get the little ridges. Those little ridges is going to give you all those nice golden color. The other thing I forgot to mention, I mentioned cheese, putting you know, like your favorite aged cheddar or something. If you wanted to add it into the potato, you can do that as well. I just find the bit of Parmesan with the parsley works for me. Into the oven now, middle rack, 400 degrees Fahrenheit, uncovered. Now if, for instance, if this was a bit higher, if it was a smaller container, as we spoke about earlier there, the risk of it bubbling over would have been real. So I would have put it onto a cookie sheet before I put it into the oven in case it spills onto the cookie sheet. Easier to clean up than cleaning the entire oven. Sup soldiers? Listen, if you enjoy this recipe, I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and click that bell notification thing. If you've made the recipe, take a picture and send it to me. Email address down here. I mean, trying to tell people the email address, them butts will take the address and do all kind of thing with it. And tag me on Instagram at Caribbean Pot. I really appreciate you guys and thanks for being in my kitchen with me today. Irene? 30 minutes later. Now, here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. You need some patience. We need this to set for about 20-25 minutes or so before you get in there to carve them out. But anyhow, 30 minutes later in the oven, middle rack, 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Remember those edges I was talking about? Notice all that golden color in there? We got a nice bubble happening there. And you know, earlier I alluded to the fact that were it a bit higher in the baking dish, the potential to spilling over was real, and that is what I was talking about. Put a sheet pan below. Let's let it sort of chill for a bit there, about 20 minutes. Remember, I have here a glazed baking dish which will retain a lot of heat. Now if you're greedy, if you're licorice and you want to go in, you want to scoop, go ahead and do that. Chris here at CaribbeanPot.com. Always a pleasure having you all in the kitchen with me. Yo, not shepherd pie, but I'm telling you, once you get in there, you're gonna say, Chris boy, forget all the haters, you know what you're doing. And I do know what I'm doing. Yeah, I